It is a pretty cold brand new week. A whole new Speedway conversation. Welcome indeed to episode 31. Welcome back to 360 Speedway. Down. Hello and welcome back. Thank you for tuning in for episode 31. Quite remarkable as we bring you, as is the regular aim here on 360 Speedway, some more enjoyable and interesting Speedway discussion. That's certainly the ambition week on week. I'm Derek Smith. Thank you once again for tuning back in. Let's get to tapes then on episode 31, introducing this week's lineup of Speedway punditry excellence. So, in no particular order, first up this week, we shouldn't expect exclusive team news every time he's on 360 Speedway. So many of you, thank you very much indeed for doing it, reacted to his breaking news around Peterborough Speedway the last time he was on 360. Welcome back to the one and only CJ Carol Johnson. Welcome back, Carol.
Evening, Derek. Evening, 360 fans.
Next up, the man with his own fan club on 360 Speedway's YouTube channel. If you haven't frequented our YouTube channel, please search us out, have a look at some of the comments below some of the previous discussion topics, and join in the debate. The deep thinking man of many clubs, welcome back to 360, Dean Felton. Hey, Dean.
Hi, Derek. Hi, everybody.
Your own fan club, Dean, eh? And completing this week's lineup, the man of many baseball caps, ever so stylish, on track, on off, and off, I should say. Who else but Lawrence here. Welcome back, Lawrence.
Evening, guys.
Have you put in your order for a new baseball cap for Christmas, Lawrence?
Yeah, stocking filler.
Collectively, this week's handlebar heroes. Once again, all opinions and views expressed are those of us as individuals and bear no resemblance to any clubs, former or current, that we are or were associated to. Okay, on to Fans Pulse Lap 1 tonight. There really is only one talking point in town, I think it's fair to say. News broke. It's something that we have been touching on 360 Speedway for a number of months. We've been building up. We've been trying to be constructively positive and pick out some imperfections we could describe it as with British Speedway. For several months, we have focused on and made some suggestions about various things that might, in the fullness of time, if adopted, improve the product. However, we also talked about the trials and tribulations behind determining the shape and the direction of British Speedway in 2026. This particular winter has been described and anticipated for many months as being a vital crossroads in the history of British Speedway. And so it's proven. The AGM has been postponed from November to January. The 6th of January, we believe to be the date. And it appears, we've seen various but very few clubs announcing signings of riders when normally there's an abundance of that type of activity already. And then on Friday, of course, the formal communication and public acknowledgement we came into the public domain where Chris Louis and Ipswich Speedway announced that, Chris Louis announced that he was prepared to put Ipswich Speedway up for sale, and I can't remember the actual phrase, but his thinking, his ambitions were not aligned necessarily with the sport currently. I think collectively the alarm bells are well and truly sounding if they haven't been already, and I think we can formally, as Speedway Star have, confirm that British Speedway is in crisis. Gents, I want to say again that on 360 Speedway we set out from episode 1, we want to talk the sport up, we love the sport, we only want the best for the sport. Any suggestions, any critique that we have discussed over the previous 30 episodes has really only ever been well-intentioned, and whether it was ever adopted or not, would always be other people's decisions, of course. But right here, right now, let's keep it real. Let's reflect the anxiety and the concern amongst the Speedway fraternity around the UK. Carol Johnson, I'm going to bring you in first of all. British Speedway is in crisis, undoubtedly, Carol.
Yeah, we've been saying it, haven't we, for a few months now, and obviously, big shock with Chris's announcement. Somebody who's been at the club since he was a little boy, really, and it's a bit of a shock. And whatever's made him make that decision, it must be massive, because he wouldn't make that decision for no reason. But yeah, it throws another spanner into British Speedway works, doesn't it? And how do we as Speedway fans, as Speedway supporters, deal with that, and how do we bring it forward? Obviously, we know that Emil's not coming back into the league next year. We've not heard of other top riders not coming in, but you can probably see that that's the way it's going. So, what decisions have been made behind the closed doors that we don't know about, and it's going to affect British Speedway.
Dean, just to be a little bit more precise, because I can hear perhaps promoters, supporters of championship clubs, perhaps feeling a little bit, whilst they wouldn't deny that British Speedway is in current crisis mode, they would quite rightly, I think, point to the real fires having to be put out at the Premiership level, because the Championship and the NDL as distinct leagues and distinct products are fairly sound and fairly robust, thankfully. It's really the Premiership that's in crisis, Dean Felton.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, what we've got is for next year is the Hokey Cokey League. 5 teams in, 5 teams out, Lemon in, Louis out, Shaked all about. That's pretty much where the sport is at the moment. Nobody knows what's going on. I don't think anybody really knows the solution at this point. I mean, I know that I read Rob Godfrey in the Speedway Star saying they were doing a 7-team Premiership and a 6-team Championship, but that to me seems like they're trying to decimate the Championship to prop up the Premiership. And I don't know, the people I speak to seem to just want the one big league, but I understand that comes with a lot of problems.
It does. Lawrence, listen, just to reset the whole scene, and I'm going to focus on the Premiership here, because I think unless I'm way off beam, that's where the fire is raging, Lawrence. But the season just gone features 7 Premiership clubs. It effectively ended with 5 clubs, as Birmingham have obviously lost their use of the Perry Barr Stadium, now sadly demolished. Oxford quickly announced that they would not re-enter the Premiership in 2026 to concentrate on Championship and NDL, presumably. And so suddenly the top flight found themselves reduced to 5 clubs. And I think, Lawrence, it's fairly safe to assume that all the efforts and all the focus over the past X weeks since the end of the season has been predominantly to source one club to restore the Premiership back to 6 or thereabouts, Lawrence.
Yeah, this is it. I mean, as we said before, the Championship seems pretty stable, so the problems always seem to lie at the top, and this is ironic after such a fantastic season and with a great ending with the playoffs and everything, and it's come to this. But there's still so many questions to be asked, and where does it go from next year? Like Dean said, I don't think anyone knows. And does this mean there's going to be pretty much one league now, and that'll be the Championship? And say if Kings Lynn, for example, want to run, then they're going to have to go Championship. Or so other clubs have signed riders. Some clubs, I think, have room to sign top riders in the Premiership. So. Just leaves us speechless, really, with who knows what on earth's going to go on.
Lawrence, you know Chris Louis fairly well, and I'm sure Chris wouldn't mind me saying that I have reached out to Chris to invite him on to have a chat on 360, and maybe, and I completely understand that it's maybe just a little bit too raw and a bit too soon for the moment for that to happen, but under Chris, Lawrence, you know, I sense. And I can only come to this conclusion, you know, that Chris, for his reasons, is highly reluctant to, if not, you know, downright refusing to do so, to take Ipswich out of the Premiership electively into a Championship standards product. So you know, you know Chris, Lawrence, you know, is there, forgive me asking this, you know, is there an element here of potential Premiership snobbery around Ipswich, and perhaps even one or two other Premiership clubs who have rarely, if ever in the past, had to dip out of the top flight?
Yeah, I mean, so we spoke about getting Chris on. You know, mentioned obviously because he was a friend and we had Donkey and Scott Young. We mentioned about getting them on before, and of course this turns out, you know, this comes out. So, but it would have been great to get him on, you know, and obviously if everything had gone, you know, on the back of what happened last year and the win. But yeah, Ipswich, we've been lucky around here. Ipswich have got such a great motorcycling sort of community, you know, with motocross, grass track. There's a big, you know, lots of bike shops, and they all support the Speedway. Even the Stars support the Speedway. It's always been really well supported, and they've built a club which has got, you know, when we look, it was a shocker when Emil signed, wasn't it? You know, and people can believe that, and Doyle as well was a dream top two, and they have elevated themselves to be probably the best supported club in the country. You've got good backers around here, and lots of, like I say, lots of supportive motorcycle community around them. And I can see, you know, with Chris's, you know, it's probably not going to enable everyone they're associated with it, because they're not going to really want to all of a sudden go from what they've got now, you know, or what they had last year, to they may be sort of feel like a step down, you know. But they've always been, whenever I've asked around here, they've always been quite reluctant to go one league, so there's a lot of logistic problems that will never work, and it's going to be really hard to do that sort of thing. So yeah, I do understand there may be a snobbery, you know, not the best word for it, but along the lines, you know, we built something up and it was a shame then.
Yeah.
But you can't get the other clubs, you know, they all try hard to get as much support, and you can't make people go to the Speedway, you know, just you can't just conjure up numbers, you know, and it would be ideal to get those lesser clubs, you know, elevate those, and it still seemed to start to do that for a few years now with the GP riders, didn't it? You know, attracting more and more GP riders, and I really thought, like most of us, we probably all thought, you know, it's gaining momentum now.
Yes.
More GP riders on board, and the leagues are attracting them, but all of a sudden, just seems to be a turn on a sixpence, you know, and just literally within a season and a half, and we've gone completely the other way, and we're out in the wilderness now, really, and who knows what's going to happen now.
It feels like, and listen, you know, in any type of business, Speedway included, I can completely understand why business owners would want their business, their product to be the best it possibly can be, and you know, if that's where Chris is coming from, and you know, it's Premiership or nothing, you know, to some extent, I can completely respect that. Carol, you gave us an exclusive on 360 the last time you were on, and thank you very much for all the reaction out in social media and on YouTube in reaction to that. But Carol, you know, against the background as we now understand it, we can now it makes perfect sense why the BSPL would have been approaching you guys at Peterborough, why we might have been hearing whispers of a potential new track at Northampton, etc. It's been that desperate need to try and source a sixth club at least.
I think obviously the Premiership has struggled for a few years with teams, with getting teams in, and it's all down to cost. Not just down to, whether it be us, whether it be Northampton or somebody else coming in. It's all down to cost, and if that's where Chris is at, that he's going to lose so much money dropping down. I can't see how that would be the case, because you're not going to lose. Well, hopefully you wouldn't lose that many supporters just by dropping down into the Championship. And I've always said the Championship, I think, is a fantastic product. When we was in the Championship, it was brilliant. It was the best product of British Speedway. Obviously, the Premiership's now grown, and it's the standard got a lot higher. Obviously, now we don't know what's going to go on, but it is a problem, and it's a problem getting clubs to step up to pay double the wages for the same riders that you can get in the Championship. And this is what I've said, before, and I'll say it again, and I'll use Chris Bomber as an example. He riding in the Premiership, he gets double the amount of money than what he was when he was riding for us in the Championship, and so, you're getting the same product from him. He's not, it's not like he's turning up at a Premiership meeting with brand new machinery every week or, anything like that. You're getting nothing different.
Yeah.
So you're paying top money for the same rider as what you're watching at a Championship track. And for me, is that value for money? No, not if you've got two leagues. They're doubling up, doubling down, whatever they're doing, and you're getting the same rider. So, I think I've said it before. We might have to have a shake-up and lose the top riders. Go to one big league. We might end up losing more clubs because of it. Which is not ideal for. It's not ideal for tracks that are trying to come back, like ourselves, that are in a fight with the council, and we're trying to tell them that Speedway is needed. And then we're getting tracks closed left, right and centre. It's no good for us. I know Cradley are looking at coming back, and obviously, there's plans with Lakeside, Coventry, all these, tracks that are trying to come back. Well, it doesn't do us any favours when you're trying to go to the council and go, oh, by the way, we want to we want 21 acres of land to build a speedway track, and for the supporters, and they turn around and say, well, actually, no, 5 clubs have disappeared in the last 2 years. Why should we do that? We're going to put it into something else. And you can see where they're coming from. So it makes our fight really hard, really difficult. There's obviously more to it than what we know with obviously the Ipswich thing, whatever's gone on there. We don't know, and we can't really sort of guess at it, because you're just guessing for guessing reasons, and we could be way off the mark. It could be something completely different.
Yeah.
But for obviously Chris to step away and Richie to walk away, especially like with Lawrence says, that the support that they've got, the sponsorship that they've got, they've got one of the biggest sponsors, in League Speedway, and it just makes you wonder why would Chris walk away at this point? So it's a tough one. It's a tough one for British Speedway, and I don't know at the minute how we go about solving it and rectifying it. And there's obviously clubs that want to run. There's clubs that want to run Championship rather than Premiership. You can't bend their arms to push them into the Premiership, and it be financial suicide, because then we're going to lose even more tracks. So, do we bite the bullet and go, right, we'll have a season or 2 seasons as one big league. Let's see how it goes. Let's see what the finances bring at the end of the season. Yeah. And if it's a positive, then we can keep it. If we've got to look at something else, then we look at something else. But where do you go? If you're thinking then of taking another two, possibly, 1-2 clubs from the championship, all you're doing, you're watering down the championship. And so then your Glasgow's and your Plymouths and your Oxfords are going to be complaining that they haven't got enough meetings, just the same as the Premiership were. So it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Whatever you do, there's no right or wrong. But what we've got to do is what's best for British Speedway.
100%, Carol. Carol, can I stay with you just to ask you one more question? So, Bellevue, Kings Lynn, a lot of clubs have been very tight-lipped about it, and I'm thinking more so the Premiership clubs. So I haven't seen anything in dispatches from Bellevue or Kings Lynn to shed any views as to where their heads are at. But both of those clubs in particular have never dropped out of top flight level in my whole lifetime of following the sport. Chris has now essentially chosen, based on our best understanding, electively not to take Ipswich out of the Premiership. I'm going to ask you the question, Carol, because you've been on both sides of the Premiership and Championship fence. Have you sensed any, what I'm calling speedway snobbery around elite clubs?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. There's definitely clubs that want to run Premiership. 100%. Because they want to be the elite of British Speedway. The Championship dropping down is a tough league. It is tough, and and obviously there'll be concerns about enough riders to have just one league. With it's been brought up many times at AGMs. There's not enough riders to go round. Now we've got to encourage riders to come in. I was at Gaydon last week talking to Lee Trigger regarding Ben. And obviously Ben's dropping out for next season. Which I think for a lad of his ability, his age, why is he dropping out? So we're losing another rider that's a talent. So we're losing another British rider, and so what are we going to do? That's one more gone. How many more are going to go? The younger ones are the ones that we should be encouraging through, and they're the ones that we should be looking after. And like we said, if we've got one big league that we've got plenty of meetings, it's going to be beneficial to them. Obviously, some of them are doing Premiership, Championship, but they want as many meetings as they can. If they can get a meeting every week, or at least one, if not two, every week, so it's consistent. It makes perfect sense for them. But we can't lose British riders, and we are doing. And where do we bring riders from? We're going to bring them in from abroad, and they're going to be more expensive potentially than what we've got here. So it's a tough one, really. And I mean, at Mildenhall the other week, to be fair, it was an NDL level, apart from us having Simon and Paul Stark in the team, and you got Ben Morley and James Shanes, Connor Cole's riding for Mildenhall. But it was a great little meeting. The supporters loved it.
Yeah. But
we had no superstars, and it's Speedway. If somebody's there to watch Speedway and good racing, then that's what they want, isn't it? We've said this all along. Would you sacrifice the superstars to keep Speedway and have good racing? Possibly, yes.
Yeah. Dean, we've spoken, chapter and verse, albeit we're speculating. So, we're having a similar conversation to Speedway supporters around the country at the moment. None of us truly know Chris's underlying reasons. We've got no entitlement to know that. Perhaps in the fullness of time that will be shared, and Chris might be happy to do that. But in terms, Dean, of the Premiership trying to find that elusive sixth club or more to allow them to come back to tapes in their current format. You've got to ask the question, Dean, haven't you? Why none of the Championship clubs were encouraged or persuaded to make that step up? So the lack of a TV deal, I dare say, might be a real practical factor in that. Oxford have chosen, of course, as we mentioned earlier, not to re-enter a side in the Premiership next season. Surely that tells the Premiership club owners and promoters all they need to know, Dean. None of the Championship clubs, and there's 2 or 3, maybe 4 clubs in that Championship who I think would be more viable than others to make that step up, but none of them are choosing to do it. Surely the Premiership model is fundamentally flawed, Dean Felton.
Yeah, I mean the Championship, on the surface of it at least, is a sustainable league, and there are money owed last year in the Premiership, so yes, it's sustainable at Ipswich, but was it sustainable elsewhere like Oxford? Birmingham lost a lot of money. Is it a sustainable league? But you think that, are we going to come January, are they going to say, well, it's 5 teams and run a league like that? Because for me, if you're talking about entertainment, sports, a league, whatever, you've got to have jeopardy. And so you've got 5 teams. What if one of those teams has a season like Birmingham's? So there's only one team not qualifying for the playoffs, basically, and that team just happens to have a season like Birmingham's this year, where they didn't score any points. So basically, by May, you've already got the playoffs sorted. Yeah. So what's the point of between May and September having any meetings? There's no point. Nobody's going to go and watch that.
True. Yeah, I can see
you know what I mean? There is no point. There's just... I don't know why there's... I don't know whether it's snobbery or, but to me, we should be at this point just accepting that we can't get another team, so it's going to have to be one league, whether we like it or not. I think the fans like it, and I know quite a lot of the British riders like it, like the idea. We need to go there, and we need to be pushing that now, not waiting until January. If people say, oh, we don't have media coverage in Speedway, well, it's a good job at the moment, because we'd be crucified if we were in the mainstream media now. We would be absolutely crucified for this. Yeah. We need to make a plan now and push the one big league, because it's not necessarily what we want, but I don't see any alternative.
Yeah,
I just don't.
No, listen, we will very, very shortly turn attention to what we think might happen next